Time again for another installment of the basics, and on today's show, in regards to the Star Trek customizable card game, I want to talk to you about the Delta Quadrant, more specifically when you're building a deck to play in the game. Most people think that when you build a deck that's based in the Delta Quadrant, it's the same as the rest of the game. Well, it's not, and I'm going to show you all about the Delta Quadrant right now. Normally when you're building a deck for the Star Trek CCG, you have at your disposal almost every race in the game, or affiliation in this case, a plethora of missions, facilities, ships, and personnel, and you can pretty much do anything and go anywhere. But with the Star Trek Voyager expansion and subsequent expansions after that, there had been the introduction of the Delta Quadrant, and you can't really treat a deck being based in the Delta Quadrant the same as you would for the rest of the game. Even like with the Gamma Quadrant, because you have the use of the Bajoran wormhole and you can access the main universe. So, in the Delta Quadrant, when you build a deck, you are limited to 5 races that you can use, and any card has to have that little triangle, which is the Delta Quadrant symbol. So what you can have is either the Federation, because of Voyager, the Borg, obviously, the Kazon, the Hirogen, which I just did an episode on recently, and the Vidians. Now, I've mentioned on previous episodes about some of these Delta Quadrant races and how good they are for decks, and if I had to rate them from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest quality deck, 5 being the highest quality, it's very simple. It would go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And when you're taking this into consideration, you also have to remember that all of your missions have to be Delta Quadrant missions. You can't just start picking and choosing what you want. They all have to have that symbol. But the nice thing is, with the expansion for Voyager, there are more than enough missions to go around, especially missions like these 3 that any crew can attempt. So you don't necessarily have to have affiliation-specific missions when you're building a Delta Quadrant deck, but you have to remember that you are confined to that quadrant, and if your opponent is playing a deck that is anything but Delta Quadrant, you're not going to have any interaction from him aside from the dilemmas that go under the missions. You won't be able to go into his quadrant and initiate battle. So you really have to think long and hard about your deck, because in this case, being separated from your opponent, you have to score points much quicker than he does, unless of course he has a Delta Quadrant deck as well. But the chances of that happening are quite low. So you will be building a deck that is primarily to score points and as quickly as possible. So you're going to be wanting to load your deck with personnel that can complete almost any mission. So in this case, that's why you're going to want to either use the Federation, the Borg, or the Hirogen. They have the best attributes in their personnel, and they have the best ships as well. Now, unlike a Gamma Quadrant deck, which would be either Dominion or Ferengi or something like that, there's no Bajoran wormhole or any way for you to get to the other part of the space line. And as I mentioned earlier, you're alone in this quadrant, unless your opponent is playing a Delta Quadrant deck as well. So you really have to be careful building your deck. It has to be something that is quick and efficient and doesn't get bogged down by too many personnel with low attributes or too many personnel in general. And you're going to have good ships that can help you get to the missions quickly with their range and complete. It's as simple as that. That's all for today. Have a great day.